Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dismantling the Religious Roots of Patriarchy. This past week was the anniversary of, um, 105 years since the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. And we have been celebrating that as Women's Equality Day. Although we certainly must be aware that that did not necessarily give all women the right to vote or ease in accessing the vote for Native American women, for immigrant women, for Black women. It took a longer time. So, so this week we are still um, celebrating the 19th Amendment, even as there are some who wish to take it away, to take that right away from all women. And so it's an important thing to be recognizing, not only celebrating and honoring, but being active in making sure that our rights are not taken away from us. So today, I want to talk about Eve. I want to talk about our foremother, Eve. Although I want to remind us of talking last time about the household codes that were part of the Greco-Roman society, coming from mainly Aristotle, that ordered society. Men over women, parents over children, slaves under their masters, and citizens really under the authority of a Christian government, which is what the um, Christian nationalists are really hoping to install and to have these codes put into place. So it's very insidious and needs to be we need to be mindful of that and what the agenda is, because they're using language of faith. They're taking it right out of the Bible. And that's why I want to go to Eve, because way back at the beginning, in the beginning, in Genesis, we have the story, of course, of Eve and Adam, and what has traditionally been known as the fall or the beginning of original sin. And that's a whole nother topic we can dismantle later. But um, you probably know the story that in this version of creation, and every culture then had their creation story. This is one creation story among the nations and the realms of that time. So anyway, you know that the talking serpent tempted Eve, tempted the woman who ate the forbidden fruit. Doesn't say apple, by the way, ate the forbidden fruit. And then she turns around and offers it to Adam, to the man who also eats. And of course, when God confronts them, as is often the case, the man turns around and blames the woman. The woman made me do it. But she's not blameless either in the story, because she turns around and points the finger at the snake. The snake made me do it. Nonetheless, plenty of blame to go around in this version of the story. But ultimately, throughout history, Eve has been seen as responsible for the fall of humanity into sin. In fact, in the book of Sirach, which is from the second century before Common Era, it says, "From a woman, sin had its beginning, and because of her, we all die." Well, thank you very much. And there are others, some of the early church fathers, Tertullian in second century Common Era claimed that all women carried the blame for Eve's sin. He said, "You are the devil's gateway. You are the unsealer of that tree. You are the first forsaker of the divine law." It goes on from there. So thanks a lot for that. So this is the foundation, and it's still in play. We still have parts of our liturgies, our hymns that talk about the fall, and why Jesus came in order to undo the fall. There's a lot that's been written lately to think about all these things in a different way rather than original sin, to think about creation and original blessing. Different perspective on things. And another perspective is that there are a lot of other versions of the creation story that never made it into the Bible. For instance, there's a document called the Testimony of Truth, comes out of the 4th century, and it tells the story of the Garden of Eden from the point of view of the serpent, which was a symbol for divine wisdom and knowledge. And in this version of the story, it depicts God as jealous and as the villain in the story. So the serpent actually is the hero. A totally different interpretation of that story. Um, Not saying that that's the right one. There is no right one. These are stories that tell or try to tell um, versions or stories or interpretations, creative thinking about how the world came to be, how we got here. So different ways of thinking about it, which is pretty interesting, right? Um, but it gives us a different perspective on Eve. Um, and it's something we have to pay attention to in this day when um, the daughters of Eve, as we're called in the Chronicles of Narnia, right? Susan and Lucy are daughters of Eve. Peter and Edmund are the sons of Adam. But I always like the I'm a daughter of Eve, especially when we understand that Eve was framed in this story. God does not come off looking good in the classical story either, really. God, I know if you really look at it and think about it, God sets them up and then punishes them for doing what God knew they were going to do, right? So it's a pretty convoluted story. If you want to take it literally, it doesn't look good for God at all. But if you understand it as mythology, as truth within mythology, then it's a different way of looking at Eve, the mother of us all, not a sinful woman, not a fallen woman, not any of the language that the early church fathers adopted to then to use for all women, and then even today, not to use, or even if they're not thinking about it. You don't have to be a biblical scholar. You don't have to be a religious person, even. You don't even need to know this story. But what you do need to know is there are a lot of people who do, and they use it and are using it in order to keep the patriarchy going. And this is something we need to pay attention to, dismantle, um, reclaim Eve as our spiritual as well as, well, I don't know about physical. Was she a real person? We can debate that, but our mother. And so let's, on this anniversary of the passing of the 14th Amendment, let's remember Eve, and then let's go out there and get to work and making sure that all of Eve's daughters are protected from this danger. All right, go get them. Thanks.